Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But today is the 6th of April 2023. These are the stories that we will be discussing in detail during the course of the show. We'll begin with the latest as far as the IMF-Pakistan deal is concerned. How important is this deal for Pakistan? How is the government doing to revive Pakistan's economy? We all know that the IMF has conveyed to Pakistan that it has received confirmation from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia of the $2 billion in additional deposits. This, of course, is rekindling hope of an early settlement of this tranche that is to arrive in Pakistan. Ishaq Dazhab also is going to go to the UAE and then is going to go to the US for talks with the IMF. So all eyes are on these talks and of the future of the Pakistan-IMF relations. This and more concerning Pakistan's economy, different facets of it will be discussed during the first segment. Our second segment concerns the situation in Palestine following the Al-Aqsa raid. Now, this has further aggravated the situation in Palestine because we were already seeing the brutalities by the Israelis on the Palestinian people, one way or the other, whether it be through killing of the Palestinian youth, through incarceration, and now they are entering the holy sites of the Palestinians, including the Al-Aqsa Mosque. We'll be discussing different repercussions and how the world has reacted to this raid of the Al-Aqsa Mosque in detail in our second story. And then we'll be discussing about Rayan Al-Shelb, who's made his first contact with the country Germany, the European country Germany, in 2009. But now he is not only a German citizen, but is also mayor-elect of one of the villages in Germany. We'll be talking about the rise of this Syrian migrant in our third story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns the IMF-Pakistan relationship. Ishaq Dazhab going to the UAE and the US for further talks with the IMF, and the assurance given by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for the $2 billion in additional deposits that the IMF has also confirmed to Pakistan. More and that in the following report.
Pakistan is navigating a challenging economic situation as the country grapples with impact of Ukraine war, climate ravages and global economic recession upon domestic economy. The Asian Development Bank warned that Pakistan is at dire risk because of low foreign exchange reserves, foreseeing the country will have the highest inflation and the second lowest economic growth among 46 Asian nations. PDM government is trying to resume the stall IMF program in order to buttress falling reserves and ease the balance of payments crisis. Government is also trying to catalyze financing from other sources, but bilateral and multilateral sources of affordable external financing are hampered by higher international interest rates, weaker market sentiment, or tighter global financing conditions. Pakistan has made substantial progress towards meeting policy commitments needed to unlock loans, and the country needs to avoid default. In a major development, Pakistan has received the nod for funding of $2 billion from Saudi Arabia. The development is a significant step towards reaching a staff-level agreement with IMF, which has imposed the condition of Pakistan securing $3 billion from other countries for the revival of its $6.5 billion bailout package. According to SBP Governor Jameel Ahmed, Pakistan's foreign exchange reserves will above $10 billion by the end of June 2023. Government of Pakistan has taken tough measures, including increasing taxes and energy prices and allowing its currency to weaken so as to gain macroeconomic stability.
Dr. Ghulam, who is an economist with the CAREC Institute at the Asian Development Bank, joins us online. Dr. Sahab, thank you very much to have joined us. It's my pleasure to discuss Pakistan's economy and its relationship with the IMF with you. Speaking of the IMF, now that it has received the confirmation from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the Ishaq Dazhab is also going to the UAE, and then he'll be going to the US for talks with the IMF, does it rekindle hopes for an early availability of this tranche from the IMF?
Thank you so much, Barsa, for having me. Definitely, I agree with you in terms of rekindling the hope, especially the announcement of the Saudis government for the $2 billion rollovers. If you look into the historical perspectives for the last couple of weeks, I would say government of Pakistan is being struggling in terms of attracting the friendly countries' pledges, I would say. We have been lucky that very actively and pragmatically the government of Pakistan has been received the $2 billion and the commercial loan from the People's Republic of China. So that was again one of the key development that we had. Now the hopes were hinges on the Saudi government commitment and reassurances. And again, as you mentioned, we got that commitment from the Saudis as well, and as highlighted by the IMF. Now, the last, I would say, kind of hope is totally hinges on the UAE. And as you mentioned, definitely the Ishaq Dar Sahab visit to the UAE is very much important. And I think even before going to the USA for the spring IMF and World Bank meeting, it would be great if we can convince the UAE for announcing the 1 billion pledges and commitments. That would be great achievement even before going to the USA. So on a bilateral front, I would say definitely the government of Pakistan has, I would say, achieved all the assurances that were there. Now, visiting the USA for the spring meeting for the IMF and World Bank, I think the key, I would say, objective for the government would be to convince the IMF for the 10th and the 11th review so they can be done combinedly. We have been already kind of, delayed on the 9th. We have already been delayed for the 10th. That was supposed to be finished by early month. And now for the 11th review is supposed to be starting in next month. So what I want to say is that the IMF hope is there, and definitely I can see, like I would say next week or week after that, probably we can have the announcement from the IMF for the staff level agreement.
All right. Now, Dr. Saab, also I'd like to understand the relationship of the IMF with Pakistan is crucial at this juncture. Also, not only for the present, but also for the future. This is what a lot of economists are saying, that Pakistan will be relying on the IMF, among others, in order to stabilize its economy. Do you feel the IMF wants to enhance this relationship, wants to continue this relationship with Pakistan?
Well, definitely the IMF kind of reliance is there, but if you look into the current Pakistan economic situation, especially the external financing, Pakistan currently needs the external financing, and that not only comes from the IMF by itself, but IMF having the relationship with IMF will definitely bring in the multilateral banks and the multilateral donor agencies onto the table for the discussion. So I think having IMF into a broader picture, I would say, is definitely there. And again, if you look into the current situation, all of the economists knows it that now the next IMF kind of negotiation need to be kicked off very soon. We are now expecting that by the next fiscal year, probably we'll again land into the IMF negotiation. So all those development is again important. And in terms of the relationship with the IMF is again very much important. So reliance on the IMF is there. The relationship, I totally understand, is crucial. But I think if we can take this as an opportunity, that whatever kind of suggestions that we can take, the good suggestions that we can take from the IMF, I think that would be good for our economy, for our external financing balancing. So I agree in terms of the cruciality. It has been there, but at the same time, I think having IMF on the table would bring lots of hope for the multilateral development banks and for the bilateral agency that has been involved in this whole process. Just to give you a quick example, the last pledges that we had with the Islamic Development Bank, that is about $4.5 billion, right? And we had pledges from the Asian Infrastructure Bank and so on and so forth. So I think if we are in a good relationship with the IMF, the multilateral development banks will align with ourselves, and that would be an opportunity for ourselves rather than taking IMF as a threat for our economy.
Dr. Saab, the State Bank of Pakistan says that Pakistan has to repay foreign debt worth $2.2 billion in 3 months. Now, do you feel that we will be able to get foreign debt of another $2.3 billion rolled over till the end of June in order to sustain ourselves?
That is doable. If you look into the recent Saudi's announcement, and I'm also hopeful for the UAE, and I think the finance minister has also been engaged with the rest of bilateral countries as well. So in terms of the engagement, it's doable, one. B, I can also see, I got recently, I've been connected with the Ministry of Finance, and they are bringing in that how they can increase the exports in next couple of months. So possibly if the exports jumps, right. So if the export jump, and definitely it's possible. And also I can see the efforts of the government to attract more remittances. So if the government bring in more remittances and increase the exports in next couple of months, I think that is the announcement of the State Bank of Pakistan is doable.
All right, Dr. Saab, you talked about the exports. The exports have been dwindling in the last few months. And there are a lot of concerns from the different quarters, especially from the textile exports, organizations. That then also the stocks are retreating on the political uncertainty that Pakistan is facing. And the Asian Development Bank says that Pakistan's economic growth is to decelerate to 0.6% in the fiscal year 2023. What's your comment on these three issues?
Well, if you look into the growth deceleration, it's not only the internal factor of Pakistan. It's been again linked with the external factor, and we all know it. That how many the external factors in terms of the Russian-Ukraine war. If you look into the global slowdown, if you look into the supply chain disruption, and again, if you look into the multi-factors are there, right? And at the same time, if you look into the internal economic condition of our country, you can definitely see the deceleration of the economic growth. So they projected about less than 1% of GDP growth of Pakistan. I think that makes sense in terms of having the external and the internal factors. So that I think makes sense. But if you the question about the export sensitivity, I think that is very much important. And of course, we can see in the last couple of months the exports were dwindled. Now the question is, what's the main reason there? And I think the main reason to me is the imports restriction. All of us knows that almost 60% of your contents or raw materials that basically translate into your exports is reliant on your intermediaries products. And unfortunately, with the reason, there was a reason to curtail the current account deficit. Government of Pakistan takes the initiative to restrict the imports. So that was one of the key reasons that our exports were basically slowed down.
All right.
Along with that, I can also see some of the reason, for example, the high cost of borrowing in terms of energy and also in terms of the debt, and also restriction in terms of having the international agreement for the exports. So those were some of the fundamental things. I think exports were decelerated. So if your exports are decelerating in next couple of months, definitely it will also impact the deceleration of your growth projection. That is again tailored in with the Asian Development Bank perspective.
All right, Dr. Saab, I'd also like to understand the report that was recently published by the World Bank. In its Pakistan Development Update, it says that various economic shocks have pushed the nearly 4 million Pakistanis into poverty this fiscal year. How do you see the efforts that have been made by the current PDM government to assist the poor households? And what should be the long-term framework of this government in order to eradicate poverty?
Look into the government efforts. I think the biggest effort that was in terms of having the World Bank on table, that was the harmonization of the GST, and government now had agreed on it, and probably the news is there that we are almost there to get the $600 million from the World Bank as well. So those efforts are there in terms of convincing the World Bank. It will impact the current account deficit of Pakistan. It will also impact the fiscal deficit of Pakistan. So these are some of the efforts in terms of, I would say, correcting the macroeconomic fundamentals. But the question that you asked about the poverty, that how we can basically bring in or improve the livelihood of the Pakistan. So definitely the government of Pakistan, in terms of bringing in I would say the subsidies, especially the targeted subsidies in terms of attracting or alleviating the poor segment of the government, poor segment of the society. There is still a little bit, still kind of a concern of the IMF. They call them the cross subsidies. Let's see how efficiently the government of Pakistan, especially Ishaq Dar, when they visit and meet in person with the IMF colleagues, let's see how he can convince the IMF delegates there. But again, the government of Pakistan is giving the subsidies to alleviate further the livelihood of the people of Pakistan. We can see the targeted subsidies in terms of ration, food, atta, flours. So these are some of the initiatives the government has been taking. But what would be the long-term strategy? I think, it's not something that we can do like in a short term. But for a long term, we need a consistent struggle, I would say. we need a consistent struggle to correct the macroeconomic fundamentals. In
But
one
you
of the
talk about
key
macroeconomy, Dr. Saab, you talk about macroeconomy, global lenders, and also the Asian Development Bank that says that Pakistan's growth in the fiscal year 2024 is going to increase to 2% if it resumes its macroeconomic stability. Now, macroeconomic structural reforms are key now for Pakistan's development and also for its future relationship with the IMF. What kind of macroeconomic or structural reforms do you see this current government taking, and what more needs to be done?
Well, I think the first thing that government has been already taking, that is the revenue enhancement, and I can see the struggle of the government of Pakistan to increase the revenue enhancement. And the numbers are there. I don't want to go there, but the struggles is there. Also, the government of Pakistan is currently curtailing the expenditure, especially the subsidies that are untargeted subsidies. And again, let me be focused on the energy sector. So government has been taking measure there to correct the energy sectors are there. So I think these are the two, I would say, initiatives of the government of Pakistan that would going in the long term to correct the macroeconomic fundamental. One is government efforts are there to increase the revenue generation, and the government efforts are all there to increase the unnecessary expenditure, I would say. So these are the two so far I would say the hopes are there in terms of the correcting the macroeconomic fundamentals. But in a long term, definitely we need to rely on our export. And the question arises that how serious the government of Pakistan is for their exports, unless and until we are not going for 50-60 billion dollars of the reserve that should only be generated for the exports. I think correcting our macroeconomic fundamentals in the short run will be always a challenge for us. We'll always be relying on our friendly countries. We'll always be relying on the cruciality of the IMF negotiation.
Dr. Saab, will Pakistan be able to collect enough reserves to cater to its external financing needs? Because as far as the estimates that I have, 28.9 billion per year is what Pakistan needs, or 8% of the GDP during fiscal year 2023 to 2025, including IMF repayments, maturing Euro bonds, repayments against Chinese commercial loans. Do you feel Pakistan can achieve that?
This will be, will be a challenge for us, especially the next year. I can see would be definitely a challenge for us. For the current year, I think the conservative estimate is that from $5 to $7 billion by this fiscal year, that is achievable. And then, as we discussed, we can see the commitments and the rollover from the friendly countries. For the next year, around 25 to $30 billion, that would be a challenge. But again, if we can from now think of the new IMF program, from now I'm saying again now, because we need to be very careful this time for a new agreement negotiation. That is the must. So IMF program is must, and then definitely from now, whatever commitment we are doing with our friendly countries, we need to comply those commitments. So reliance on the friendly countries for the next year, reliance on the IMF, and reliance on the multilateral development bank will be, I would say, the key factors to avail the required reserve for the next fiscal year. But at the same time, as you mentioned, if our growth start a momentum for 2% in next year, and hopefully by 3 or 4% the year after next year, I think when we got those momentum, definitely there will be internal impetus from the economy, which will definitely bring in a hope for the required result. So I can see a challenge is there, but it's not something impossible. Definitely we can do it.
All right. Now, what in your point of view is the sustainable policy framework to minimize fiscal deficit? Because it's something that is very important for Pakistan's economy. And in your point of view, how can this be achieved?
Well, the fiscal deficit basically is two components are there. Your expenditure side and your revenue side, right? Now the question arises is, if for Pakistan, definitely, if you have to work on both of these things. You have to increase your revenues and you have to decrease your expenditure. Now the question is how we can basically go for the revenue enhancement. So, for example, digitalization is one of the initiatives, and government, for example, the single window initiatives, the digital FBR initiatives, and so on and so forth. There are initiatives out there where government is trying to basically digitalize the taxation measurement there. Also, the government is bringing in, for example, I mentioned the harmonization of the GSP. So, numbers of measurement are there where they can basically bring in the revenue enhancement. also the government is trying to bring in new sector. For example, agriculture is one of the important sectors, but unfortunately, the contribution of the agriculture into revenue is less as compared to the manufacturing sector. Similarly, the real sector is again one of the important sectors, and third, the services sector. So these are some of the sectors that are again very much important. The government needs to bring in these economies into the taxation so that the revenue side can be enhanced. So this is from the revenue side. Now on the expenditure side, the government now need to be very, very cautious about the expenditures. And I think that is something very crucial. And especially my suggestion would be on the developmental expenditure, if that is not strategic, if that is not required, I think the government should be very careful about the developmental expenditure so that we can maintain the fiscal balance or the fiscal good situation in the economy. So reliance on your expenditure, reliance on your revenue. The question is that how much basically you are trying your best to enhance the revenue and to decrease your expenditure in your economies. So reliance on these two things are very much important.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Ghulam, Samad, economist with CAREC Institute at the Asian Development Bank, to have joined us, to have talked to us about Pakistan's economy and the future that seems to be bright in the wake of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's $2 billion US rollout. That was one of the preconditions of the IMF, and now Ishaq Dasab is also going to the United Arab Emirates, so we might be hearing good news from there as well. And then are his meetings with the IMF. So we are expecting a breakthrough as far as the tranche of the IMF is concerned, also for future programs with the IMF. Let's see how things go. We'll be updating to you with all of the updates that come as far as the economy is concerned. Let's come to our second segment, and our second segment concerns Israel and Palestine, and of course what happened at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The fact remains that the situation is very tense as far as Palestine is concerned, because in the beginning they were handling the men, the women, the children, incarcerating, killing the youth, but now they're entering the pious places of the Palestinians, and the latest incident being in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Israeli police, of course, as you know, clashed with the Palestinians at this mosque a second time on Wednesday as well, hours after the arrest and removal of more than 350 people in a police raid in the compound, and despite a request by the United States to ease tensions. We've been joined by Dr. Hamid Khan Al-Mashriqi, analyst, to talk more about this. Hamid, thank you very much to have joined us. Hamid, the fact remains that this time also the United States appealed to Israel to ease whatever it is doing, but it falls on deaf ears. Do you feel Israel is on a collision course with Palestine?
Thank you very much, Omar. Yes, I mean, if you look at the history of Israeli forces, what they've been doing to the Palestinians, and I mean, this is not the first time that they have raided to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. They have done it in past many times, but the thing is that the world has to stop them. And I mean, it is very, unfortunately, very sad that I have not seen the reaction which I was expecting from the Western world. I mean, this Israeli forces attacks on Israel, on Al-Aqsa Mosque, and then firing the rubber bullets, and then using the tear gas, using the hammers, and using the stick, beating them up. It is not acceptable. And even if you look at the situation that they were worshipping in the holy month of Ramadan, where they are supposed to stay in the mosque for overnight and other to celebrate, to practice the further prayer, because Al-Aqsa is the third most important holiest place for the Muslims, as we all know, and that's why I mean we never thought that anybody would attack on that, but Israeli forces are keep doing it. And on the other hand, this is the message which they give to the rest of the world, that they can they can walk over on anything, they can attack on anything of Muslim holy places. I mean, we have seen the political turmoil in Israel, we have seen in their political government, but I always say that Israel's state strategy will never change against Palestinians, against Muslims, and that is what we have seen everywhere. Rather, I mean, when it's a political turmoil, they do more attack on Palestinians to get the favor of the Jewish voters and to get the favor in the right-wing, parliamentarians in the Israeli parliament, and that is what exactly they are doing. So, I mean, it is unacceptable, first of all. Secondly, doing it in the holy month, it shows that they do not have any respect of not only of the of a holy month, they do not have respect of any religion. I mean, it is about the respecting the religion, and this is what Israeli forces have done, and Pakistan and other Muslim countries must condemn openly. And we might have to call for the Security Council, meeting. I mean, China have taken a part in it. UAE and Muslim countries have already condemned it. So, I mean, we have
Well,
to.
Hamid, Pakistan has condemned it. Pakistan has taken out a whole resolution in the National Assembly and adopted it against the Israeli attack on Al-Aqsa Mosque and the oppression of Palestinians, which was tabled by MNA Naz Baloch. Then our Prime Minister, our President, both have condemned in the strongest of words this attitude of Israelis and the way they are treating the Palestinians and now entering into the Al-Aqsa Mosque. You also talked about the reaction from the world, whether it be the United Nations that calls for easing of tensions. The Special Coordinator for the Middle East peace process, Mr. Wenisland, has said that. Then we have the intervention by Jordan and Egypt, which are involved in the US back efforts to de-escalate these tensions. We have a lot of, the Arab League is also holding an extraordinary meeting on the request of Jordan to talk about this very issue. Then you talked about the UAE and China also, and of course that is also on the cards. Canada's New Democratic Party is also urging the government to take action again after this Al-Aqsa raid. Do you feel these actions that have now been taken as a result of this Al-Aqsa raid is enough? What more needs to be done?
To be honest, it is enough. The things has been done against Israeli oppression against the Palestinians who are fighting without any, without any ammunition, without any weapons. They are fighting barehanded for their fight of freedom against this occupation of Israelis. And I mean, there is no doubt that whatever the world is doing, it is okay. But I always say there is more need to be done in terms of sanctions, in terms of boycott the Israeli products, in terms of Muslim countries boycotting it and considering terminating their diplomatic relations with Israel again. So, I mean, these are the things which needs to be done furthermore, so that Israel would understand that they cannot do the both things. On the one hand, they are trying to establish the diplomatic relations with Muslim countries. On the other hand, they will carry on oppressing the Israeli Palestinians. It is not going to work. This is the message which should go to the Israeli government, that they cannot play on the both sides. They cannot keep oppressing and keep doing the violations of human rights in Palestine. And now I'll tell you what they are planning. They are planning to do further attacks on Gaza using the excuse of rockets and others. So, I mean, they will carry on targeting the other.
You said that they are going to further aggravate this current assault on the Palestinians. Will this give rise to that 11-day war that happened in 2021, a similar situation?
God forbid not, but anything can happen in Palestine. Anything can happen in those occupied areas, because it depends. I mean, it depends if there will be much losses of the Muslims. They have already targeted a 14-year-old boy. They have already targeting old age people. They have already targeted worshippers in the mosque. So if any more casualties, it will escalate like that in 2021, or it can go to, it's always fear of intifada again, like early 2000. So we have to remember that Palestinians have given so much sacrifice, and they are carry on giving the sacrifice for their freedom. While on the other hand,
Hamid, the fact remains that words, meetings are good, but all these need to be translated into some kind of an action, because this is what Palestine has been waiting. The hundreds of resolutions that are there in the United Nations General Assembly that have been passed but have not been implemented. The implementation is the key word here. Do you feel the United Nations now, its role becomes even more important?
Of course, definitely. United Nations role is very vital in it. But unfortunately, the United Nations have failed to do so because of, we all know that America is the one who's been doing the veto of all resolutions against Israel. America is the one who is supporting Israel openly and hidden. So all this support from unless there is a support from America, there is hardly, I would expect, any tangible action from United Nations. Because I mean, we have seen that everything run in United Nations is mostly with the influence of Americans, and now I mean, Israelis are if they are carrying on doing this, the thing is that on the one hand they are expanding their settlements of Jewish colonies in Israel and Palestine. On the other hand, they are keep reducing the space for the Palestinians living in Gaza, West Bank, and other areas of Palestine. So if they will keep doing it, it will escalate the situation. There is a certain level of pressure which Palestinians can handle. There will be a reaction from the Palestinians. There will be reaction from the Hamas, and then they will call Hamas a terrorist group. While they will need Israel and America, the world needs to understand that it will not be the Hamas would not be the terrorists. It is the reaction from the Hamas activities of Israel. So this is the thing world needs to understand, and world needs to take a proper action against Israel, such as told sanction, boycott of Israel products, and furthermore, I would say that there should be reconsideration of diplomatic relations with Israel. That is will be a very key point, and especially the recent Muslim countries who have started their diplomatic relations, such as UAE, Bahrain, and other countries. So they have to come forward and do the justification that if this is carry on, how can they carry on the diplomatic relations with Israel?
Agreed, Hamid. Now, the Al-Aqsa compound is contested by both Palestinian and Israelis. Al-Aqsa compound in Jerusalem's old city, we know, is Islam's third holiest site where tens of thousands pray during Ramadan. But the Jews say that it is their most sacred site, revered as Temple Mount, a vestige of the two biblical Jewish temples. Do you feel Israel is deliberately changing this political arena of the conflict between Israel and Palestine into a religious one?
They are always doing that. They were always using this tool that turning it into the religious, factor of the matter. I mean, Muslims have no objection as far as Israelis are worshipping in the Aqsa Mosque in certain areas. Muslims have never objected that. The only thing is, yes, we do not want them to build the final tomb, which they want to build in these years. They want to demolish the Aqsa Mosque and build the final golden temple.
That is why I say they are turning this battle into a religious one.
Yes, that is what, and I mean, Muslims will not accept any kind of demolition of Al-Aqsa Mosque, any kind of changing the status of Aqsa Mosque, any kind of entire control by the Jews on Aqsa Mosque. This is something which Muslims will not accept. Muslims are ready to do the religious practices in the harmony for all the religions. It is Aqsa Mosque have so much importance for Christians as well, for Jews as well, for Muslims as well. So, I mean, as far as the religious importance of the Aqsa Mosque is concerned, there is never an objection from the Muslim side. Yes, we are not willing to give entire control to Jews or to Israeli government, and we would not compromise. Muslims would not compromise on their right of worshipping and right of controlling the Al-Aqsa Mosque the way it is. And they have been doing it for many years. That they have been trespassing, they have been attacking on Aqsa Mosque, and this is what Muslims have to take action against.
Now, the spokesperson for President Mahmoud Abbas says, and I quote, Israel's raid into Al-Aqsa Mosque, its assault on worshippers, is a slap to recent US efforts which tried to create calm and stability during the month of Ramadan. Can US play an important role?
Yes, that's what I was saying. Only US is in the position to play an important role. We have seen that there was a proposed, visit of Israeli Prime Minister to United States, and it was cancelled due to the political situation in Israel. So that we have seen that America can take a proper important role, but it depends if America will do it or not, because there is a very strong Jewish lobby in American Congress, in American business, in American politics, in American rich class. So they always protect the interests of Israel. We have seen that, and that's why America is not playing the role which they should have done it. They can do it, and America's role is very important. If America wants to stop these atrocities, these human rights violations in Palestine. America can stop it within a day by using so many tools which they have, whether it is the aid to Israeli, unlimited aid, whether it is supporting their, ammunition and weapons and supporting them logistically and for many reasons. So America have all the control to do so, but it depends how would America do it, because American establishment is controlled by the Jewish lobby. We know that, and Jewish lobby is working in the interest of Israelis.
All right, Hamid, time and again when I've talked to the Palestinian diplomats, and there was one who was here now this very show yesterday, who said that we are relying on our Muslim brothers, on the Muslim countries, on the Arab world to come as one and to stand by Palestine. Now that yesterday a meeting of the Arab League that consists of 22 important countries was held on the request of Jordan, do you feel the responsibility of organizations such as the Arab League, such as the OIC, becomes even more important under the current situation?
Yes, definitely. I mean, that is what I said in the beginning, that it is the Muslim countries who have to give a very strong reaction. They have to take tangible action, which will make Israel understand that now the Muslim world is united against Israel's atrocities and their, what they are doing against Palestinians. And then keep saying it, that there is only one way to get, to stop this Israeli, further occupation and settlement, is a strong reaction from Muslim world in terms of practical action, such as boycott, such as stopping the diplomatic relations, such as, stopping the sports relations, events, so many things. I mean, that there has been so many events has been happening in other Muslim countries with collaboration of new Israeli, government and the sports ministry and others. Why? How can we do it? And this is what Palestinians are saying to those countries, that this is a betrayal to their bloods and sacrifice which they have given for the 70 years. If they considering the betrayal to the Palestinians, whichever Muslim country is establishing the diplomatic relation to Israel without the resolution of the issue of Palestine, and Israelis are not even agreeing on the two-state solution, which has been designed and which has been agreed by rest of the Western world, agreed by the Muslim world. All they need to do is to act upon that two-state, solution. If they do not want to do the two-state solution, and if they want to carry on, then Muslim world has to come together, has to take action together, and that is the only way.
Happening despite the two-state solution having been put forward since so many years, nothing concrete has come out of it, and we seek the continuation of Israeli atrocities and barbarities towards the Palestinians. The latest being the Al-Aqsa incident, where, as per the laws that ordain the Al-Aqsa compound, the Muslims were allowed to pray, the non-Muslims were only allowed to visit. But now they are also being allowed to pray in the very compound, as per a violation of the very agreement concerning the Al-Aqsa compound. Also, I'd like to understand something. As far as the facts are concerned, there is also a lot of strife, a lot of division within the current Israeli government as we speak. Do you feel its aggression towards Palestine and towards Al-Aqsa is also a deliberate diversion to what actually is the situation in Israel?
Yes, definitely. That's what I mean. I believe that whenever there is a political turmoil, political instability in Israel, they divert their attention from political scene towards this attacking on Palestinians, and they raise that issue and they make that thing so that they can carry on their attacks on Palestinians. They can carry on doing their ill political practices. We have seen so many other scandals in Israeli government, the corruption scandals and other scandals, and to changing the diversion. And then if you see these recent differences in current Israeli government is started by the extreme right-wing member of parliament, where they were demanding further restrictions on movement of Palestinians. When I was reading it, I was shocked that what further restrictions they want to implement on Palestinians. My friends have been to Israel and have been to Palestine, and the stories which they tell them, honestly speaking, I wish to visit the Israel and see with my own eyes that how badly, how I think miserably the Palestinians are living there, that to cross one border, they have to wait for hours and hours for such a small thing, such as doing the banking or such as doing the daily routine things. They have to go through a pain. If a Palestinian kid wants to go to school, sometimes he has to go through such checkposts. It is a humiliating thing what Israelis are doing. And on the other hand, Israeli parliament is saying that they need to put more restrictions on Palestinians movement. They need to do more checks on Palestinians. I mean, it is the world's second biggest prison, Palestine. Israel have made it a prison for the Palestinians. One prison is Kashmir and one prison is Palestine. And the
So many
both
similarities
are
between the two, Hamid. So many similarities between the two situations and the way the two situations are being handled, aren't there?
exactly. That's what I always say. That if you look at the way, India is handling the Kashmiris and India is doing their oppression with atrocities in Kashmir, and the way Israel was doing against the Palestine, we have seen so many similarities, so many same patterns, and like trying to change the demography, trying to demolish their businesses, trying to stop them from education, trying to restrict their movements, trying to attack their youth, trying not to get them educated. All these tactics are exactly the same. They are copying to each other, and they are having a race who does the worst for their Muslim, who does more atrocities, who has become more criminal. So they both are actually war criminals. And I mean, when they talk about International Criminal Court, I'm sorry to say, I sometimes laugh on the proceedings of International Criminal Court. If they cannot see the atrocities in Kashmir and in Palestine, honestly speaking, they need to shut down that International Criminal Court. There is no benefit of such hypocritic institution where they cannot see what Israelis doing, what Indians are doing. I'm very vocal about it. I have spoken on many platforms, and I will keep talking about it.
Thank you very much, Hamid Khan Al-Mashriqi, analyst, joining us and talking to us about the latest in Palestine and the atrocities that continue. And now they are entering a new realm, and that is that of religion, with the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Al-Aqsa compound being raided by them. And of course, there have been injuries. And I'd like to end this segment by one part of the quote by the far-right police minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who is from Israel. He says that Israel should have a harsh response. He says it's time to rip heads off in Gaza. I hope that the world is really listening. I hope the Arab League, the OIC and the other organizations will take stringent action to what is happening in Palestine. And finally, this needs to be done before it's way too late. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, we'll end with a positive note. A Syrian refugee has finally been elected mayor of one of the German villages. A Syrian who arrived in Germany as a refugee in the year 2015 has now been elected as a mayor of a village in the southwest of Germany. Ryan Al-Shabl, who is 29 years of age, is a member of the German Greens, stood as a non-party candidate, won an absolute majority in Sunday's mayoral election in Ostelheim in Germany. Congratulations to this young man. He was born in 1994 in the town of Suwaida in southwest Syria. He started a degree in finance and banking management, but gave it up because of the outbreak of war. And then, of course, he migrated to Germany. And look at where he is now. Congratulations. And it all proves to say where there's a will, there's a way. If you strive hard for something that you believe in, you will always achieve, if not completely, at least a big part of it. So keep on trying, keep on endeavoring, whichever way you feel you need to go to, and inshallah you will attain whatever you want if the right spirit is there and the right passion is there as well. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new stories and segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Allah Hafiz.